All right, hopefully everyone can hear me. I'm running a test here to make sure that everything is good. Okay, everyone, we're going to start right at the top of the hour. I'm just doing some testing as this is the first time we're doing the meetup via AirMeet, and I want to make sure that everything works for our presenter today, Jim Sullivan. Jim, great to see you. I'm going to turn on my
Great to see
video
you, John.
too. There we go. You want to go ahead and just test your audio and everything, make sure you're good?
Yeah, let me close out my email because it's popping up that I have a blockchain summit scheduled.
There you go.
And how do I test my audio?
You sound great right now. Maybe just you want to test a little bit of just showing the first slide of your deck?
Sure. Am I sharing? I don't think I'm sharing, right?
No, you're not sharing yet, but we got, just a couple minutes here to test it and then we can run it.
Share screen. Okay, and from the beginning.
Yep, look perfect.
Okay, great.
And
Well,
maybe in the chat, can everybody kind of just post if you see that? Bobby, I see you're on here.
oh, you know what? I don't think I can see the chat because I have two monitors and it's showing the presenter screen that's in presenter mode.
Yeah, no problem. Everything looks great from my perspective, Jim. So I think when we're ready to go, you can just leave that slide deck up there, and then, or maybe pull it down. We'll just kind of do the exact thing. Can you stop sharing your screen? Perfect. Then when we hit the top of the hour, I'll do the introduction for you. And then also we're going to have Bobby from the Hyperledger Technical Steering Committee and Learning Materials Working Group also do a presentation. And she's on the meetup right now as well.
Oh, yeah, I can see Bobby in the chat.
Bobby, I'm just going to try and invite you to the room here, and let's just see if I can do that here real quick, just as a test. Do you want to maybe test your video as well?
I'm not seeing. I see speaker. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound loud and clear.
How's that?
You're awesome. Perfect, Bobby. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us. And let's go ahead and let's see if I can. Okay, yeah, I can easily make it where Jim is just the only presenter. So I'll invite you back when we're ready to go here, Bobby.
Perfect.
But maybe what I'll do is, as the intro, let's all three stay on here. And then I can go through and introduce you as well, Bobby.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Who is going to is the live chat just for us or are these for attendees?
The live chat is for the attendees, so I'll just be, the host and moderator here.
Okay.
And then, Jim, you're going to start off and do your roughly 30-minute presentation. Then we're going to take a few minutes of Q&A. Then, Bobby, I'm going to turn it over to you and talk about your great work with the Technical Steering Committee. And then we're going to go ahead and break out of the main room presentation and then go into what I call the, meetup networking type deal.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Yep. So this should be a good test. And then, as this is, beta testing for all of us, we're going to learn a lot from it.
I have 4 daughters and they're all home from school right now. I
Yep.
the door because you never know. It can go from very quiet to extremely loud here like that. So
no problem, Jim. That's the reality we live in, and welcome to 2020, right?
Yeah.
doesn't stop them. My youngest will just bang on the door, but hopefully I can ignore her.
Yep, no problem. We'll just continue on and just assume that it's all good here. Okay, well, I think I'm going to go ahead and, since we're going to try and run through this here, let's see if I got anything coming through on the chat. It's all live and ready to go.
I'm not good at keeping up with the chat during webinars. It's just like
no problem. I'll be taking care of that, Jim.
Okay.
So from my perspective, just let me be more of the moderator of the whole event here, and then we can go from there. But I think this will be a good test.
Yeah, I told you what we did for that one client of ours, which worked out, or mine. We recorded the webinar, but we got on it, and then we answered questions, and at the end, so it made it look like it was live, and then we got on at the end and answered questions. So.
Good. And then if you want to share that link to the webinar with the group here that's joining, that would be wonderful as well.
Oh, I should share the link with the webinar?
Well, I would just say at some point during your presentation, maybe at the end, you can just put it into the chat if it's convenient. Otherwise, no problem.
I don't know what I'm going to give him. Is this link that I'm in here? In the
oh, no, I decided if you had another presentation you wanted to.
Oh, no. That wasn't for Hyperledger. That was for something different.
Okay, no problem. Okay, well, I think let's go ahead and kick this off. And I will go ahead and do the introductions now, and then we'll move on here. So today is the final Hyperledger Denver meetup for 2020, and it's been very challenging for us as far as hosting these meetups. And David Boswell from Hyperledger has been wonderful to work with on getting these virtual meetups off the ground. and I think that they're great, but today we're going to be testing AirMeet, and this should be a different way to connect where it brings back a lot of that personal networking that I think we've been missing during this challenging year. But today we have a great presentation by a couple of presenters, and first I'd like to mention that we're going to have Jim Sullivan, and he has a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and a master's degree in computer science and an MBA. And he's been a practicing software engineer for over 20 years now. And he leads an expert team in blockchain development, DevOps, cloud, application development, and a lot of agile development methodologies. And he's an IBM master instructor, and he's also a blockchain professional. So Jim's going to give us a great presentation. And then I also have the pleasure of having Bobby Mascara from the Hyperledger Technical Steering Committee join us today, which I'm very pleased about. And she's also the chairperson of the Hyperledger Learning Materials Working Group. And she has done a great job with really updating the Hyperledger website with all these great learning materials. She also runs Ledger Academy, which is a blockchain training center in Princeton, New Jersey. And really just a great communicator and contributor to the Hyperledger community. So at this point, Jim, I'm going to take Bobby and I off the stage, and I'm going to turn it over to you and just go ahead and share.
Okay.
And then we'll reconvene, and Bobby's going to give us a nice presentation around the Learning Materials Working Group.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone, and it's great to be here. Thank you for your participation, and very thanks to John and Bobby both for having us in. Can everyone can see my screen? Am I projecting?
Everything looks perfect.
Okay, fantastic, great. Well, again, welcome everyone. My name is Jim Sullivan, and let me get my here. And we're going to talk about Hyperledger Fabric for system administrators versus developers, and we're also going to talk about some of the attributes of a system administrator, Hyperledger Fabric system administrator job. So we can see here Hyperledger Fabric certifications and career choices. So think about it now. How much do you know about Hyperledger? And John already covered this. So our outline here is going to be Hyperledger Fabric highlights. And HF is going to be Hyperledger Fabric, the components in the architecture, Hyperledger system administration, and Hyperledger application development. That's one of the, when John mentioned being a blockchain professional, we're certified in several of the blockchains, Ethereum, and EOS, but we also, one of the services our firm is looking to get more involved with are enterprise applications for Hyperledger. So I'm a former IBMer. I still know a lot of the Hyperledger team down at IBM. So I am, we're keeping in touch with them on a regular basis. So some highlights about Hyperledger. So the Hyperledger in and of itself is more of a distributed ledger technology, not exactly the same as a blockchain like Bitcoin. I can say it like this: all blockchains are distributed ledgers, but not all distributed ledgers have that blockchain architecture like we think of Bitcoin or even Ethereum. Hyperledger, though, is a permissioned distributed ledger technology, a little bit different from a public one where you see all the cryptocurrency traded. It's highly modular. It has pluggable consensus. A lot of times we hear about these consensus algorithms like proof of work. Well, when you get down to permission blockchains, it's the consensus of the transactors that matter. We don't need somebody out there to create a new block, list all the transactions in there, and then everybody votes on which block has the correct transactions. It's not like that at all. There's an open smart contract model. So we'll talk about smart contract. I imagine everybody knows what those are, but those are applications that execute transactions on Hyperledger. low latency and finality and confirmation, and flexible approach to data privacy. So smart contracts can be written in multiple languages, and this is true for a lot of blockchains. So we have Go, which is very popular. Obviously, Java, JavaScript are also have been around a long time. There is support for Ethereum, for the Ethereum virtual machine through Solidity, and it's designed for continuous operations, including rolling upgrades, asymmetric support, version support, governance and versioning of smart contracts, flexible endorsement models, and queryable data. It uses JSON, and JSON is a key value pair of way of managing data. It's used in very popular APIs. So the things we're going to talk about here are the peers that are part of Hyperledger. So the back when the design, we'll get into this, but when the original designers were thinking about what's the most efficient way that we can design Hyperledger and have a lot of efficiency, a lot of transactions per second, is to have specialized nodes. So peers, ordering services, they're all examples of specialty nodes. We'll talk about the certificate authorities, the Fabric ledger, the channels, smart contracts and chain codes, endorsement policies, and membership services provider. So like I was introducing, Hyperledger is designed to have specialty nodes, and Corda also is built that way. Corda is, I guess you could say, a competitor somewhat of Hyperledger, and fundamental unit of the Hyperledger network, no question about it. The peers maintain the ledger and the smart contracts. So the ledger is not really kept. It's managed, but the ledger is managed slightly differently than what we would think a typical blockchain ledger would be managed. And here are the peer types. Again, even at the peer level, there are specialty peers. So the anchor peer, the leader peer, the endorsing peer, and the committing peer. So the peers are a network of entities that maintains a ledger, runs the chain code containers in order to perform read-write operations on the ledger. So this is where the ledger is updated, and peers are owned and maintained by the members. So peers can be created, so spun up, started, stopped, reconfigured, and even deleted. And there is a set of APIs that enable administrators and application developers to interact with the services that the peers provide. An orderer is another node that's part of Hyperledger, and it's the mechanism by which the applications and the peers interact with one another. And the orderers are there to ensure that every peer's ledger is kept consistent with each other, because obviously we need that agreement. So these are specialty nodes, again, called orderers. They're orderer, it says here, orderer types. These are messaging services. You might recognize these: Kafka, Solo. These are deprecated as of version 2. Raft is what is recommended. Also, I believe IBM's MQ messaging has now been added to version 2. I believe that is the case. Given what I know about IBM, and IBM's tools are great products, but they sometimes are extra complicated, Raft might be really the recommended way. I certainly agree with this. So the orderer atomically broadcasts the committing transactions to all the peers, and it receives the same block transactions from the same orderer. So the orderer service orders transactions. It uses a first-come, first-served basis, and the transaction is ordered. After the transactions are ordered, the records are committed and grouped and assigned as part of a block for that communication channel. So the ordering service will manage all the transactions and make sure that the transaction records are committed to their assigned groups. So again, Raft versus Kafka. Kafka is quite popular. If you've ever used Uber, you've used Kafka from behind the scenes. But Raft is supported natively, and which means that users are required to keep their requisite images and learn how to use Kafka and Zookeeper on their own. So you can use Kafka, or I'm sorry, you can use MQ as well. So please look into that if you're more of an IBM person. Kafka uses that pool of services, and the administrator and orderer organization specifies how many nodes they want to interact with a specialty channel. So Raft is the first step toward the Byzantine fault tolerance ordering service. And so there's the certificate authority. So the certificates are what we use for security, for access. So Fabric Certificate Authority is a private root certificate authority provider. And it manages the digital identities from participants that have the form, and this is the form of certificates. Again, it's custom. So the certificate authority is custom, and the root certificate authority needs of Fabric is inherently not capable of providing SSL certificates. So that HTTPS that you see, so it's not provided by Hyperledger Fabric. So there's no general automatic use of it within browsers. You can create web applications. You can create secure web applications, but you've got to add a layer on top of that. So it is custom implementation by the certificate authority, and alternative to Cryptogen, and helps in registration of identity and enrollment. So the ledger stores the important parts of the business transactions. So the ledger consists of two parts: the world state and the blockchain, which is nothing but a transaction log. So the world state is the state of that ledger. And interestingly enough, we always hear, a database, relational database, or a database and a blockchain, they're not the same thing. You either use one or the other. But most likely, if you ever host or are familiar with any kind of distributed ledger technology or blockchain node, most likely somewhere in there, in the infrastructure of the node, there is a database. And that's the same for Hyperledger. These are what we call NoSQL databases. So LevelDB is the default. You have that to manage the world state of the ledger. And you also have CouchDB. So both of these are quite popular. And the ledger is absolutely tamper resistant because it is hashed. And it records the state of all transactions. And they are a result of the chain code invocation. So as the chain code executes, there are updates to the ledger. And each transaction does result in those key pair values, and they're committed to the ledger as creates or updates or deletes. And that is going to be committed to the world state like that. So some of the features are the query and update using key-based lookups. So we can enter keys looking for certain values. We have read-only queries that using the rich query language associated with Couch. There's also read-only history. So we can query history for certain keys to enable data just for reporting and enable certain data scenarios. Transactions, again, consist of versions of the key pair values, and that were part of the chain code, and these values were written in the chain code. So transactions ultimately contain signatures, and every endorsing peer are involved and submitted to the ordering service. And the transactions are ordered into the blocks and are delivered from an ordering service to the peer channels. Peers then validate the transactions against the endorsement policies, and they also enforce the policies. So prior to appending a block, a version check is performed to ensure that the states of the assets or the transactions that were read have not changed since chain code execution time. So this is interesting. This comes up a lot in a lot of blockchain training. These transactions sometimes get queued up. So there could be times where the actual state of the ledger changes because a different contract or different chain code has run, and there is immutability once a transaction has been validated and committed. So immutability is performed through hashing of the data. And the channel's ledger contains a configuration block defining policies and access control and other pertinent information. And there's a membership service provider. Every channel contains the MSP instances allowing for crypto materials to be delivered from the certificate authorities. We can see here Hyperledger, as the name implies, supports multiple ledgers. So we can see here our peer, and we can have multiple ledgers. These are called channels. So a channel is a ledger or a mechanism where certain interested parties can transact on the blockchain network, communicate, collaborate. There is privacy on the channels, and they are permissioned. So like it says here, a channel is a private subnet, and communication on the network for the purposes of conducting private and confidential transactions. So in Hyperledger Fabric, we also have system channels and application channels. Some of the characteristics of a channels, they are defined by the members, anchor peers per member, and a shared ledger. So the chain code applications and the ordering service nodes. So these are the defining elements of our channels. And each transaction on the network is executed on the channel. So think of a channel as a ledger. And that's where each party must be authenticated and authorized to update the ledger there. And each peer that joins the channel gets its own identity through the MSP, the membership services provider, which authenticates each peer to its channel peers and services. So some channel characteristics again. The election of a leading peer for each member on a channel determines which peer communicates with the ordering service on behalf of that member. So no ledger data can pass from one channel to another. So they are completely separate ledgers. The separation of ledger by channel is defined and implemented by the configuration chain code, and also by the identity membership service as well. So if somebody is not a member of another channel, obviously you don't want your data available on that channel. And data is disseminated using a gossip protocol. So smart contracts. So we often hear that smart contracts on Hyperledger are called chain code, and that for the most part that's true. Smart contracts are business agreements that are encapsulated in code. So ideally, the smart contracts will be able to build applications and will be able to execute transactions between users. So a smart contract versus chain code. So your typical smart contracts are meant to contain logic, business logic that executes within a ledger in order to manage and maintain the state of the asset, whereas chain code has governance and administrative aspects. And smart contracts are packaged in the chain code and then deployed on the network. Hyperledger also has features to update the smart contract. So as you know, with a lot of, with say Ethereum, once you deploy a smart contract, it's on that node forever. You've got to redeploy a new version of the contract if you want to make any updates. So again, we can see here a little bit about smart contracts here with this diagram. We have the ID, we have the transaction dependencies, the current state. So this is the transaction request, the interpreter. This has the code and the business logic, and then there's the accept and reject. Correctness is evaluated, and we look at the state delta, and then any types of ordering information that needs to be sent. And a little bit about some of the policies. So policies are implemented by different levels in the Hyperledger Fabric network, and each policy governs different aspects of how the network operates. So we have the system channel, and this is the consortium membership and blockchain structure. We have the application channel, that's transactions, transaction networks and business logics, and ACLs and smart contracts. So again, this is transactions, data, and events. So these policies, here's the hierarchy of the policies here. So what order governs what orderer organizes, what an orderer organizes and governs, we can see right here, and what a consortium organizes and governs over here. So we see the system channel that we just talked about with the blockchain structure, consensus, our application channel also with the consensus. We can see here as far as what our consortium organizes and governs, smart contracts, ledger data, events, also channel membership, and application channel ultimately also participates in consensus. And when an endorsement policy is set up, quite often it defines how many sets of organizations are required to endorse a transaction in order to be valid. So we've got that's required. We need to know who is going to participate in the validation of that transaction, and that's described or set during the chain code installation. So principles are described. Also, the MSP represents required IDs. Role represents one of the four aspects. Either you're a member, you're an admin, a client, or a peer. And here is some endorsement policy syntax right here. So in the syntax language, you can just see some examples of it here. So here is an admin, an administrator, a member, a client, a peer. So again, membership service provider is that mechanism that provides the members their sets of roles and permissions on the Hyperledger network, and the implementation of the MSP is required, and it is a set of folders that are added. And we can see here we have local MSPs, and we also have channel MSPs. And the certificate authority issues identities by generating a public key, which forms that certain key pair that can be used to prove an identity. As everybody knows, with key pair encryption, there is a public key. Public key, everybody is aware of your public key. That's almost like your address that we use to encrypt the message to you. And because a private key can never be shared publicly, its mechanism is required to enable proof, which is where the MSP comes in. For example, a peer uses a private key to digitally sign or endorse a transaction. So you use your private key. Essentially, the public key is used to encrypt the message and send it to the intended party, and then the intended party uses its private key to decrypt the message. And it's also, because that's a private key, it is also considered a digital signature as well. And the MSP is that mechanism that allows that identity to be trusted, because trust is a big, big part of Hyperledger as well. So to be trusted and recognized by the rest of the network without ever revealing the member's private key. So the private key is meant to be kept private. Whereas certificate authorities generate the certificates that represent the identities. The MSP contains that list of those permissioned identities. Also, the MSP turns an identity into a role by identifying specific privileges as an actor on the node or channel. And note that when a user is registered with Fabric CA, a role of admin, peer, client, or member must be associated with that user. So when we're registered on there, we do need a role. And the role of the system administrator. So this is one of the topics we're going to talk about. Some available career choices in the Hyperledger world. So system administrator administers and interacts with the chain code, the application, manages peers, and operates basic certificate authority level functions. So being a Hyperledger sister admin entails an understanding of the network topology, how chain code is processed, administration of identities and permissions, and how to configure component logging and much more. So the system administrator is the owner of the system. So I'm sure many people know Linux administrators. You talk about IBM, all those IBM products need system administrators. Those are the experts in the system. They will do the installation. They will do the updating. In fact, right here, we talk about some main tasks of a system administrator for Hyperledger. So application lifecycle management, yes, I'd say, but this is more infrastructure related. Install and configure the network. So you have the way Hyperledger is set up. It's very it's container based. So you've got to download the containers, the Docker containers, Docker installed. So there's something to learn in order to ramp up to be a system administrator. You've got to have good diagnostic and troubleshooting patience, including the reading of the correct logs. And you need to understand about membership service provider and also general network maintenance and operations. And so some technical requirements, we've already talked about some of these from the technical standpoint. System administrator should acquire basic knowledge of the Linux command line. You can install Hyperledger through, I think it's Ubuntu for Windows. I've actually done it, but again, that gives you a Linux command line shell or the bash shell. Certainly Docker. Docker will help. Docker, for anyone that doesn't know, is a runtime for containers, and containers are like virtualized applications, but they're not full virtual machines. They are only the application and its dependencies, and then a Docker runtime is required. We talked about NoSQL databases, so CouchDB certainly is because that manages the world state of the ledger. It's good to know about CouchDB and running queries against it. And of course, blockchain and distributed ledgers to have a basic knowledge of that or even a intermediate knowledge of that. There is a certification exam for system administrators. So please later on, consult back to this webinar for more information. I believe Bobby is going to follow up too with information on the certified Hyperledger Fabric administrator. And the role of the Fabric developer. So in comparison with the system administrator, developer's primary task is to work on the major component, which is the smart contracts or the chain code. So the developers are building the applications that are running on Hyperledger. So developers are required to design, develop, and deploy Hyperledger chain codes on a peer. So it's very, very similar to application development. All those rules of application development are still there. All of those best practices still apply. All of those same things that developers struggle with, meaning understanding the requirements of the customer, testing, automated testing, updating, that's all still there as well. And developer tasks would be to define the features in the transaction functions, certainly execute simple queries, create complex queries, define assets and use key value pairs. So if we have an asset on Hyperledger, Hyperledger can maintain really any item as an asset, any information as an asset, intellectual property. So defining these as assets is something that the developer will be doing. Identify private data and incorporate a private data collection, and submit and evaluate a query transaction by invoking a smart contract. And Hyperledger developers must have that solid foundation of programming in their background, languages such as JavaScript, which is reasonably popular and not really too difficult to learn. I'm sure there could be disagreements with that. Java's been very popular. If you've gotten into programming at all, I'm sure you've had some experience with Java. It really is it's a great language, and I believe even still today, it is still the largest market share. Go is another one. So Go is becoming very popular. Interestingly enough, I heard this recently, not all that long ago, that Google does not use Java. They use Go. So Go may have been developed, and I don't know the history here, but Go may have been developed as an alternative to Java. Anyway, Python as well. So all of these languages, knowing these languages as a developer, very helpful, one or more. And the most famous JS framework that is currently used by Fabric is Node.js. And Node.js is JavaScript that is running on a back-end server, for the most part. There is also a certification exam for Fabric developers, and I'm sure Bobby will have more information on that. And also, please consult coding boot camps for information on the certified Hyperledger Fabric developer class. So this is what we covered today. So we covered Hyperledger certifications and career choices, the structure of Hyperledger, the architecture, and we talked about the Hyperledger nodes, Hyperledger, the nodes, the peers, the orders. So some additional training resources, and Bobby will have the information on this, but you can see here, Hyperledger Fabric for system admins, for developers, Hyperledger Sawtooth. So Sawtooth is another product similar, very, very similar, almost a specialized blockchain or distributed ledger product that is also part of the Hyperledger family. And there are courses for system admins for Hyperledger. Some articles here, and I have actually installed Hyperledger on AWS. It's not too bad, but in order to remove it, because it was getting very expensive and I had to go in and remove it, I had to remove users and channels, so it wasn't just as easy as spinning up a server on AWS. But these are, so please consult back to the webinar for information and links to these articles. And here are more articles. Channels in Hyperledger Fabric, building blockchain applications in Hyperledger Fabric. Again, that's really where I know I am looking here, building enterprise applications. Chain code and Hyperledger designing applications with Hyperledger Fabric through the SDK. And we are going to be doing Q&A shortly. So thank you for attending this presentation. And
yeah, Jim, thank you very much
for
doing such a wonderful presentation. Yeah, and you can stop sharing your screen there. Perfect. And so what I'd like to do now, Jim, since that was such a wonderful presentation about system administrators and developers of Hyperledger Fabric, we've got a question first off from Mohammed. And Mohammed, if you could maybe try that raised hand, and then let's see if I can have you present your question to Jim. And maybe if someone else wants to go ahead and put something into the questions button there, and then we can go ahead and just go over and talk some more about this in our breakout room once we wrap up here. But I just want to kind of test a couple of these features. So, Mohammed, are you still with me on this? Okay, well, I'm just going to kick off and ask his question, and then see if any other ones pop up in the meantime. But he says, can we introduce system chain code level policies that can be used at the user chain code level?
Yes, yes, you can. It's sometimes that can be a little tricky introducing those policies, but yes, you can introduce policies um, that are associated with the user chain code level. Absolutely.
Okay, and then my question to you is going to be around the nice materials that you provided. So you'll be able to provide me with this presentation deck and all those links to all those resources as well.
Yeah, yeah, that certainly would help, right? I mean, those links didn't do anybody any good. So occasionally they seems like PowerPoint sometimes wants those links to, and who wants to copy down links anyway? But yes, you should have this presentation, but I'll make sure that it gets over to you.
Okay, perfect. And then we're just going to go with one more question here that's come through from David, probably from the YouTube live stream. And that is, whose role is more crucial in blockchain, the developers or the admins?
Well, if you want to use the blockchain, obviously you want to run applications and transact and have the blockchain for tracking, say, your inventory, tracking chain of custody, supply chain. Then you're certainly going to need developers in order to build those applications. No question about it there. System administrators are obviously needed to maintain the network. Hard to say though. I'll go out on a limb, and I think I might get some disagreement here. But I'm going to say the system administrator is not a full-time job. That one system admin can be the owner of more than one product. That seems to be, even for the most complex systems. And again, I used to work for IBM, and believe me, uh, everything, right? IBM and Easy are never used in the same sentence, almost never. So, and I never met anybody completely dedicated to a system or to enterprise software or enterprise hardware that was always in there doing something. So I'll say the developer developing the applications is slightly more important, because possibly the developer can also be the part-time system administrator as well.
Yep, makes perfect sense. Okay, we got one that came through the questions, which is great. Thank you for doing that. This comes from Alendu, and it says, how do you manage private keys on on-premise setups? And then it basically goes on to say, online HSMs are good to go, but on-premise, we found that kind of tricky.
I'm sorry, what was the alternative to on-premise?
Online HSMs are good to go. So I'm assuming they're talking about cloud instances.
Yeah, right, yeah. And for the private key maintenance on premises, is that
correct? That is exactly right, Jim.
There is let me think how we did that in the past. The maintenance of the private key. There is a client. There is another node called a client node, and I may have to follow up a little bit on this. This may be a question that we may have to send out. But I do believe the client peer does have some functionality for managing private keys, which would be on premises. It's like everything is all containerized, and a lot of Hyperledger does run in a cloud environment. So it is, but it's very, very possible that you're running some kind of a containerized solution locally, where your client nodes are managing your private keys.
Perfect. Okay, so Alendu, do you want to raise your hand and ask that any follow-up to that question, or are you good? And if I don't see any weighing in here, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to, there's raised hand, perfect. So I'm going to hand the mic over to you. Great.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead and maybe follow up on that. This is good for testing too, so I really appreciate your help on that.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, John. Okay, so the use case in particular is for a financial institution, and it's mostly for settlement. bulk wholesale settlement of transactions. So they're definitely not looking at setting up anything online on AWS. So like I said, I know we've looked at a couple of options. I've tried to say integrated to things like Vault. There's a native Docker secret support for containerization. So, but we found that when you're working with the middleware using Fabric SDK, whether it's Node.js or for Go, we've kind of found it tricky to secure that private key, right? There looks like there are options to integrate it to Vault, but it's not out of the box, right? It seems to be a lot of customization development. So I was just wondering if you've had a kind of scenario and you've been able to solve it without using custom solutions like this.
Well, the custom definitely you just brought up, so that would also be a solution as well. Thank you for reminding me of that. We do a lot of work with IBM. I still have a lot of connections there, and obviously all of those instances, almost 100% are running on the IBM cloud. But that's not your situation. So on-prem. So that would be a way to go. This is a great question to escalate up to the community. I'm not trying to push you off or anything, but certainly the Hyperledger community, we might be able to get a little more information on that, or if anyone else, because I have not encountered that in either my training or any of installation or application development for Hyperledger. But that's a great question. Actually, the private keys, right? You want to keep them on-prem, so that should be something that should be information that is readily available.
Okay.
Okay, and then we have another one that's in the chat. So it's from Jayakar. Jayakar, do you want to go ahead and raise your hand, and I will put you on the mic here just for an additional test of asking a question live. I know he was in there. He was basically asking the question.
Yeah, I see his question.
Okay, so maybe you want to just read it off, Jim, and then answer it for him.
Okay, I hope I'm understanding this right. Is that a real-time system? What may be the role of the system administrator when you say a real-time system? Is that a Hyperledger system, or I'm a little confused about that. I just want to make sure I'm understanding the question properly.
And that's maybe something we can take offline. So okay. I think at this point, Jim, let me go ahead and bring Bobby out to the stage here, and then I'll turn it over to her to do her presentation. And then once Bobby comes on and does her presentation, then what I'd like to actually do is test a few minutes in the room for the networking. And so if anyone can stay on for that, that would really be appreciated, because that's a good test as well. So at this point, Bobby, I'm going to turn it over to you. And Jim, I'm going to have you step away from the stage here.
Okay. Do I just turn my video off, or how do I exit?
I'll go ahead and turn your video off, and then I'll make the change here.
I'm sure.
Okay, Bobby, you have it, and I'm going to take off here as well, and you'll have the whole thing.
And how do I share? I see. So I want to thank you, John, for having me speak today. It's a pleasure to come out for the Denver meetup. I hope soon in the future I could actually come to Denver and meet up with you. That would be nice. So we've heard a lot about the administrators and the developers, and a lot of, let's develop a project. Let's talk about this and that. I want to tell you how to actually get involved. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully this will work. Ooh, I'm over there. Okay. I guess that didn't work, did it? Okay, so how about... Okay, is everybody looking at the Hyperledger wiki page? Hello, can you hear me?
Bobby, we can hear you just perfectly.
I can't, hold on.
Yep, it looks great.
Good, are you seeing my screen?
Yeah, we're seeing your screen. We're actually seeing your email screen right now versus your presentation deck?
Well, I don't have a presentation deck. What I want to show you is how to get involved. How's that?
That looks good. Yeah, that looks like a regular browser window. Perfect.
Okay, so what you're seeing on your screen is the Hyperledger wiki page. So as opposed to their regular website, which is hyperledger.org, the wiki page is where the people who are developing solutions and want to learn more about the solutions go. I call it to develop or play. So I'm going to, I'm sorry if I have to turn to look at my other screen. So basically what the wiki page is it's organized by the projects and tools, and then the special interest groups and working groups that use those projects and tools. So if you'll look, it's just a simple wiki.hyperledger.org, and this is the page you'll show up on. And this is the landing page for Hyperledger. As you'll see, they have a calendar of public meetings, which gives you a list of calls that happen every day that the community is invited to join. So anyone listening to this call can join any of these calls by looking at the calendar and seeing what's available. So for instance, tomorrow is a grid community meeting. So you would join the call and introduce yourself and maybe see what needs the grid community has, or there's others as well. So the projects are listed in the top, and you can see the different projects. Each one has a similar web wiki page set up where it has the information about the project itself. I run the Hyperledger Learning Materials Working Group, and I'm going to select that real quick, and that would be a group. I'm sorry, you would drop down group here, and you would see the list of groups, and we're going to go over them in a minute because I saw somebody in the chat from Telcom, so I want to talk about that group as well. Why I'm focusing on the Learning Materials Working Group is because we have libraries of information for you to access here on our homepage, as well as what we find really important every Monday morning is a list of what's going on in the community. So you can see the different meetups that are happening. Here's our meetup right here that's listed for today. You can see what's happening tomorrow. And these are not the regular project or working group calls. These are meetups like John has set up for us today. Then there's the special events. Hyperledger is celebrating their 5 years event, and they have one more discussion panel and then a networking session that everyone is invited to. I hope I see everybody out at that networking session. And again, the live links are on this wiki homepage where you can just go to the Learning Materials group and get this information. Also on this page is how to get involved, which is probably the most important thing for people who are new to the community. So if you click the new members welcome page, it'll show you the 4 steps to get involved, and they're simple. The first thing you do is need to get a Linux login, which is just verifying your email. So if you selected that, it will show you where to go to get your Linux login. And once you have that, you can log into a wiki page. As you see my face here, that's because I'm logged in. And once you're logged in, you get that toolbar that has the edit and all the other information. So now you can edit and join these wiki page discussions. You can put your name in the community pages, and you'll see how to get involved further. So to get a Linux login, and then you can edit the wiki pages. But again, you don't know what wiki page to edit or what you need to do. So you have to join a call. So once you select this, you go into the community mailing list section. And you would have you could join different groups. You would select that group, and there would be a button here that said join now. And once you select that button, all that means is that you're going to be involved in the mass mailings that go out. So you'll get notified when that group meets or other information. So for instance, I'm going to see if I have Telcom here for the people who are on. I should. So the Telcom special interest groups meet. They have discussion boards where you can ask your questions. The event was canceled for December 31st, and you can go into their main meeting. So once you join this group, you're involved in all of these conversations. So I'm going to go back to the Learning Materials Working Group homepage. And so these are the events that are happening. and to get the Linux Foundation, join the calls, and then how to get involved. I already showed you a little bit about that. You just have to join a call, and they're listed again on the Hyperledger homepage, or it's right here, calendar of public meetings. And then you can select the meeting you want to join by just going to, again, I'm going to go to, picking on supply chain now, selecting this Zoom link, putting it in a browser, and you're good to go. And introduce yourself, or don't introduce yourself, but to get involved, it's better if you get involved in the conversations. So every project here and tool and framework meets bi-weekly, and every group meets bi-weekly. The Learning Materials Working Group's purpose is to let the community know what's happening. So getting back to what we were discussing, the Learning Materials Working Group is also in charge of helping the community with the edX courses. So how the edX courses work is the Linux Foundation comes up with a competency test, which becomes the, for instance, Hyperledger Fabric Administrator exam. And what the edX course is basically they break the competencies for that exam out into free courses. So for instance, blockchain for business and understanding the blockchain implications and use cases. If you take both of those free courses, you can sit in and take the blockchain for business certificate course and get a certificate. Same thing with the other certificate courses, which is the administrator. And again, from our homepage, all of those courses are linked so you can see how to get the program information, sign up, register for the course, and take the test. So if you're interested in any of those courses, again, it is on the edX update, on the Learning Materials Working Group, a description of all the classes, and links to sign up for those classes, whether they're the free ones or the competency tests. Now, what the Learning Materials Working Group does is we are kind of like the first editors on a lot of these tests, on a lot of these edX courses. So if you're a member of our group, which at the end of this, you should be able to go to my mailing list and join, you can edit this page and put your name here so that when another course, for instance, the Certified Fabric Administrator course comes, you can be one of the first students and give feedback right to the people who developed the exam. So again, that's one of the roles of the Learning Material Working Group, is to keep track of what exams are out there and what competencies. In the community, there's an enormous push for bilingual materials. So we are trying to encourage people who can write and interpret these materials to do that. So we have Japanese, we're working on the Spanish version, I know somebody's working on the French version, and there'll be more community information on the Learning Materials homepage about that when the actual groups are meeting to get that task done. So again, these are the edX courses. Every Monday, the Learning Materials, I'm going to go back to our homepage, show off again a little bit. So every Monday we meet, and here's our meeting notes. We go over what's going on in the community, what's going on at edX, what are the new competencies, what are the exams coming out, and we talk about, we're working on, again, the topic of this is the Learning Materials Working Group. So we talked about the homepage, talked about the welcome page. We also offer templates, which are formatted documents for you to use if you're creating Hyperledger community information. So we have a white paper template, a use case template. We have the graphics you're supposed to use. We have basic webinars if you want to develop an edX course. And on the other side of the templates, we do have what we call our resource library, which is where we try to collect the information from all of these groups that are meeting. So again, the projects and tools each has their own little library with their information. We were talking about Fabric, so I'll go to the Fabric page. Talks about the quarterly reports. You can see who's making contributions to Fabric, what companies they're from. What else is the information here? It shows what are the new releases coming out. There's always a link to the quarterly report that they give to the technical steering committee. So again, this is just thumbnail information for you to get involved. Each one of these tools and frameworks, can use to be updated by if you have information that you feel is relevant, join the Learning Materials Working Group, get a Linux login, and start editing pages. Other than, I think I'm done with everything. So again, another big initiative in the Learning Materials Working Group is these key terms. We're responsible for making a glossary for the community. The Department of Education has been asking for it. Other associations, edX wants it from us as well. So we're trying to gather as many definitions as possible as a working group, and then we're going to have a meeting where we sit down and decide what our wiki page key terms will look like, a living key term. So in other words, the community can edit that term like a regular Wikipedia encyclopedia. And we hope that this grows with the community and becomes a really valuable resource for the community to attach. So again, there's a lot going on in the Learning Materials Group. There's even more going on in the community. We try to sum it up on the Learning Materials homepage for you each week. So if you're looking to get involved in the community, David from Hyperledger supplies us with all these great events that are going on in the community, and they're always listed here with links for you to get in. I will be in one of the breakout rooms if anybody has any questions on how to get involved. If you are still confused and want to get involved, you can always join the Learning Material Call on every other Monday. So it will be this Monday. And we walk through how to do all this stuff at a little slower pace. So again, John, thank you for letting me present, and I will stop sharing.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Bobby, and thank you very much for doing that. One thing I would like is if you could put a link to that Hyperledger URL in the chat here, just so anybody can easily just pop it right up on their browser and then be able to go in there. So thanks. Perfect, Bobby, exactly. So at this point, does anybody have a question for Bobby that would be relevant to the whole group? And then I'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do next about our networking session here. So let's just see if anything comes through real quick. And I appreciate everyone else testing the different functions here for Jim's presentation before, because that really makes a big difference. Okay, so I think what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and end the session. And, since this is our first test here, hopefully it'll just put us right back out into the networking area. If there's any problem, just log back in, because I'll restart it if there's any problem exiting out of the main presentation here. And so what I'd like to do is we're going to have Jim at one table, and then we're going to have Bobby at another table, and I'll label those tables within the application. And then Bobby and Jim, if you could each go to a separate table. And then I'm also going to have an open discussion table so that people can go out there and network and talk around. And the main thing what I want to try and do with this is really capture that in-person networking that we've sorely been missing because everything is virtual here, and just see how it works to reconnect with people, talk about projects that you're working on, ask Bobby about all the great work that's going on with the Learning Materials Working Group or even the Technical Steering Committee, and then check in with Jim and see, how you can get into being a system administrator or a developer for Hyperledger Fabric. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and end the session. Hopefully this puts everyone out to the main room, and then what I'd like everyone to do is just go and pick one of the couple tables, probably 2 or 3 tables that we're going to have out there, and then just join in as more of a small group discussion. But one of the things I like here is this is an opt-in type of networking versus if I put you into a breakout room in Zoom, it wouldn't give us the ability to kind of float around between these tables. So we're going to try it now, and like I say, if anyone gets kicked out, please just go ahead and click on the link again to get in the session, because I'll start it right up again. Thanks.